What's up, y'all? It's Justin Romine here. My wife just got home. This is Jamie. Say hi, Jamie.
Don't look at me.
This video is going to be a little something different than what I normally do, but I really wanted to do this test. I just picked up the Sony A7S II, and I wanted to compare it to the A7 III that I've been shooting on for about a year now. Now, before I jump into this test, I use the same settings on both cameras for every single shot that I'm doing. I use 3500 Kelvin, shot everything at 4K, 100 megabytes per second, 24 frames a second, and all I changed up, which you'll see, was the picture profiles, and I noted all the changes. So the purpose of this video is I want to see the low light capabilities of the A7 III compared to the A7S II, because that's supposedly a beast of a low light camera. Second purpose of this video is I want to figure out what the best stock picture profile is for low light on the Sony A7 III and the Sony A7S II. So this is by far like the most in-depth testing I've ever done on either camera, and I was gonna do it on my own, but figured might as well create a video, share it with y'all just in case it might help anybody out. So if you find this video beneficial, then let me know in the comment section down below. Let's go. So first up, I wanted to test the no picture profile settings. So I started off with the A7 III at ISO 1000, and all this footage is ungraded. So picture profile in the portrait creative style, and you can see my settings right there. So comparing the A7 III and the A7S II, you look at these right now, what I'm noticing is that the A7S II has somewhat of a green tint. The A7 III seems to have a little bit better color science as far as that goes. Honestly, y'all, I did not change any other settings. This is raw, straight out of camera. It's crazy that there's that big of a difference between the two cameras on colors. But right now, if you look at the grain, the A7 III is definitely winning. All right, then I bumped up the ISO to 2000. Here's the A7S II. Then I zoomed in for 200%. And comparing both of these, they're both fairly grainy. I would say the A7 III still has the better image quality. Now I bumped up the ISO to 5000, and this did get my metering to a 0.0 exposure level. So I'm properly exposed right here at 5000 ISO. And then this setting at a 1.5 zoom, they're both pretty equivalent right here as well. I would say the A7 III has a little bit less artifacting in the colors. All right, now I went over to Cine 1. And the cinema setting is what I did for the color mode on each one. This is ISO 1000. And from the looks of both of those, the A7 III definitely looks to be less grainy. And again, this still has a little bit different color, which I don't understand at all. The A7S II is a little more green than the A7 III. So the A7 III definitely has a little bit more accurate colors as far as that goes. And if you look at that, y'all, the A7 III is definitely kicking butt as far as graininess. All right, then I bumped it up to ISO 2000. This one you can definitely see some banding on that back wall on the A7S II, and on the A7 III you can see banding. This is ISO 2000. I would say the banding is a little bit less on the A7 III, so I'd say the winner is still the A7 III on this one. Now this is 6400 ISO. This brings the metering to 0.0, so I'm properly exposed right here. And then the A7S II. Now comparing both of those side by side, the colors seem to be a little bit better here on the A7S II, but it's still a little bit different. I don't know. And zooming in, 1.5 zoom, they look pretty equivalent. I would say I can see a little bit more definition in my face on the A7S II. So I'd say the A7S II wins this one on Cine 1 color mode cinema. All right, now over to Cine 4. This seems to be a really popular picture profile. This one I still kept the color mode at cinema to keep everything the same. Looking at the A7 III, and then over to the A7S II. All right, definitely more grainy it looks like on my end. I'm not sure what y'all are seeing. Comparing both of those side by side, and they're both pretty grainy, but I would say on the 2x zoom, I would say I like the grain. Man, that's a close call. I would say the A7S II wins on this one. All right, S-Log2. Now is the real kicker, right? S-Log2. I am gonna break somewhat of the rules here because I wanted to try different exposure levels, and I kept the color mode at S.GAMUT. All right, so looking at the A7 III, this is no LUT applied, so obviously it's pretty grainy. But at 6400 ISO, I thought it was interesting that this is one stop overexposed. And you hear from everybody that you want it 1.5 to 2 stops overexposed. All right, lots of grain. Both footage side by side. I would say the A7 III is winning a little bit right now. I mean, they're both grainy, but the A7 III is definitely a little bit less grainy. Wow, good job A7 III. All right, now I increased the ISO up to 10,000. This puts me at 1.3 stops overexposed. All right, you can definitely see a little more information in the shadows. A7S II, wow, yeah, lots of grain. Look like I'm watching a 1970 TV show. Lots of grain on the A7S II compared to the A7 III right now. And you go on 2x zoom. Ooh, I mean, the A7S II is definitely more grainy on this one. Then I went to a 3x zoom, and you can really tell the difference there. The A7S II looks pretty much unusable. A7 III, not really usable either, but a little more usable than the A7S II. So A7 III takes this one. All right, now I bumped it up even higher, 16,000 ISO. I'm 1.7 stops overexposed. Same everything, except we just increased the ISO. Comparing side by side, even on S-Log2, you can see the color difference. There's nothing I changed here. I'm surprised there's this much of a difference in S-Log2. And then we're gonna see it at the zoom. This is 3x zoom. Yeah, they're both pretty equal in my eyes. I don't know, comment below if you see anything different. Then I moved on to HLG Color Mode BT 2020. Obviously, I can't compare this to the A7S II because it doesn't have this, but I just wanted to throw in this picture profile. This is normal HLG. This is at the 3x zoom. This is at ISO 8000, so I'm 0.3 stops overexposed. And at 3x zoom, yeah, definitely pretty grainy. But then you compare it, HLG and HLG3. So right off the bat, you can see the difference in the colors. Again, everything else was the same. You can see that HLG3 is a little more yellow. No LUT is applied here either. ISO is the exact same. All right, now I move to S-Log2. This is a separate test I did to try out the native ISO for S-Log2 on the A7S II. Because that's a big difference between the A7S II and the A7 III. Native ISO for S-Log is 800 on the A7 III, and it's 1600 for the A7S II. So it should perform a little bit better in low light. Again, I know you're not supposed to expose it like this at negative 0.7 stops underexposed, but just wanted to see the grain on native ISO. When you throw on an S-Log Direct 709 Greg, I mean, that takes away virtually almost all the grain. You can still see somewhat of the detail in the dynamic range that S-Log provides. All right, then comparing A7 III with the No Picture Profile, Cine 1, and S-Log 2. Look at all of these different frames. You can see the difference in the colors compared to each one. The No Picture Profile is just very warm. The Cine 1 seems to be pretty neutral, and then the S-Log 2 seems to have a little bit of a magenta feel. But to me, with that Log Direct 709 LUT thrown on, the S-Log 2 footage seems to be the cleanest and most natural looking colors and lighting. Now there's with the LUT applied. So granted, you can't see a lot of the detail on my face, but if you're comparing the grain, S-Log 2 is really not as bad as people say compared to the other picture profiles. Like there's a lot of grain on all of these, and I don't notice more grain on the S-Log 2 because it's shot in S-Log. So the A7 III does really well with the S-Log 2 gamma curve. All right, now I compare the S-Log 2 of the Sony A7 III and the A7S II. You can see the color difference. Again, the A7S II is a little more grainy. This is at 10,000 ISO. You throw the LUT on there, and comparing both, I would say that the A7 III wins on this one because it's a little bit less grainy. I see a little bit less artifacting on the A7 III. And here's at 2x zoom, you can really see the difference. A7S II is really grainy right there. A7 III, grainy, but not as bad. All right, so as you can see, the Sony A7 III is an absolute beast of a camera. It outperforms, in my opinion, the Sony A7S II. Just based on S-Log and even the other picture profiles, it produces a better quality image, better colors, on top of having a better low light performance. So it's crazy. The A7S II is still a beast of a camera, but the A7 III, in my opinion, and from what y'all see, I mean, it wins. It takes the show. but I'm still going to be using the A7S II as my B camera. And as far as picture profiles go, I did like the clean look of the S-Log 2, even in a low light environment like that. Whenever I threw on that log to Rec. 709, it just seemed to have this clean look, like even though like you couldn't see a lot of details, the grain wasn't as bad as I was expecting, even when I underexposed it, so maybe that's really not as big of a deal. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, drop me a comment down below, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with a friend. We will see you filmmakers in the next video.